Right. Well, there you are, Nick. Nick's been in China. I've just set the studio up, budget home studio.
Nice to see you all, guys. Great to be back. It's been a wee while since we cut something, so anyone who likes to watch us, I apologise. Just recently, I rang Bryan a couple of Fridays back, and he wanted to do a video, and I said to him, I can't do it this week, Bryan. I'm going to China. It actually came clean out the blue, and I'll say thank you to two companies in particular. Atlas Gentech in New Zealand, who are a distributor of high-tech gear, provided marvellous hosts, and on top of that, Huawei, big Chinese combine who produce communications kit, wanted to take us to China and show us their conference and what their gear looked like. I jumped at it, opportunity of a lifetime, because I've always wanted to do a few things like go and see the Great Wall, and I managed to fit that in. So yeah, absolutely fabulous trip. So without further ado, Bryan, what do you want to know about it?
Well, I skirted around China a little bit. I've been to places really on borders, and last time I flew to the Hong Kong, the New Territories, I had passed through the new airport, and of course I was just astonished at what had developed.
Yeah.
And what I saw, I kind of drew a conclusion that China was turning into a monster vampire, energy vampire.
I think that's a fair summary.
Yeah, because actually, you know, I've never seen development like it. It's just extraordinary, really. The high-rise buildings.
Yeah. And
I just thought to myself, well, you know, somewhere in China there's got to be a lot of energy produced to... now I know all the cities are not like this. Some of the new ones are actually quite moving towards energy self-reliance or self-sufficiency. Yeah. Sustainability is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay, so just looking at it, I had a lot of preconceptions before I went. I thought, oh, China's a slightly backward place. You know, smokestack industry, you know, pretty scummy and whatever. That was in the back of my mind, and I suppose that if I was to state it was, you know, I suppose a prejudice of not really knowing. What I found was that I could describe our country, New Zealand, the same way on a retrospective, because China appeared to me to be far more modern in Beijing and Shenzhen than anything in New Zealand. The development there is phenomenal. High rise, as Bryan said, concrete being poured in enormous trucks, and a lifestyle of a 21st century urban lifestyle. Absolutely amazing to look at. Cars, modern cars driven brilliantly. There's no dents in it. They don't appear to have any road rules, but they're brilliant drivers on their own patch. Yeah, but more importantly, we went there to see technology, in particular telecommunications technology and network technology. And what I discovered was a China that I really didn't expect. And what they appear to have done is re-engineered the technology of the West up until the last generation of it, and they have poured such enormous amounts into R&D and into production that they're now in a position where they're miles in front of where Western technology is in terms of their capability for building in a technological sense. So from the viewpoint of where we stand economically, everything gets built in China at the moment. Where we stand politically, this is an emerging superpower. These people are not only powerful economically, but they are powerful in terms of technology and intellectual property around that technology.
Well, Nick, one of the things that astonished me, because I've been going to Hong Kong and to that part of the Near East since 1976, and the transformation, because in the New Territories in 1976, people were living in really poor conditions.
Yeah.
And what I saw was that had all changed in my most recent visit. Of course, it had been going on for some time, but there's certainly very little substandard accommodation in the areas that I visited.
Yeah, it's very akin to looking at a brand new Tokyo being built. People don't have a lot of floor space in those cities, and some of the apartments in Beijing, in the centre of the city, tiny floor space is being sold for tens of millions of dollars. They have the latest and greatest cars from Europe and from China. The food's good. The public transport is absolutely superb. But you know, Beijing has also got the curse of a modern city, although it hasn't done it the same way as the Americans do. And that's the automobile. There's 20 million people with 7 million automobiles, and the smog from the automobiles is just horrendous when the wind's not blowing. Fortunately, we got a few days of hot wind out of the Gobi Desert and it blew the smog away, but it's phenomenal. But the one thing, if you look at the urban geography of the place, is that they haven't strip malled. It's high rise, it's dense in a city. The older parts of the city seem to have disappeared en masse. We found a few, but it's all go ahead. But like I say, no strip malls and extensive development in the way you have in the US of A.
Yeah, or even here with our ribbon development. So, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I had tremendous admiration when I saw people being given accommodation that didn't have it, you know. Well, over 35 years ago, 40 years ago, when I first started going into that area.
Yeah.
Look, I think that the Chinese realise that there's a problem with oil.
They do.
And they're doing their best to cope with it. But you see, the problem is, apart from having to do a paradigm shift, which is problematic, nobody really knows what to do.
Well, therein lies the problem with the great Chinese economic emergence, and I can see there being, in the mid to, 10 to 20 year time frame, Chinese development will come to a halt because energy is just not going to be there. It's a scarcity.
That's right.
And what we will have seen is the emergence of an economic superpower in the way that the States and Europe came about. And they would have caught up and they would have overtaken us, but they'll fall off the same precipice. And there's a dreadful sense of fate when you're looking at all of this going on, saying, well, if it was all going to carry on forever and we didn't have that knowledge, you know, Hubbard's peak and the reverse of the energy curve, we'd say, hell, this is amazing, what will happen next? But I know what will happen next, and the reality of such an enormous country, a quarter of the world's population, having an expectation, having reached the apex of what we described as modern technology and development, right at the point when it's no longer possible, it's frightening. From a political angle.
Well, recently I did a little post on Facebook, and I took paraphrased a existentialist quote, existentialist philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. But you know, the existentialists kind of worked out that we were so shaped by our past choices and decisions.
Yeah.
But in the end, we checkmate ourselves into an inescapable cubicle of thought and action. And, you know, so there you've got this reliance on cheap energy, the energy bank now running on empty. Well, the conclusion to all that is that your economy is going to fall over.
Yeah, and it's funny though, I mean, with the Chinese bit, I don't see that the existential memory of such of actually having to toil in the fields and, you know, basically work the commune is so remote from the modern expectation. They might get pissed that they can't have the modern expectation, but I suspect that they've still got sufficient living memory and living experience of a low energy system that they will probably cope a lot better than we do.
Yeah, well, it's a big issue, and if you look at how popular culture works, and I've been spending a lot of time listening to Peter Berger and reading what he said and watching his, reading his blogs and watching his broadcasts, they're numerous on YouTube. And thinking about some of the propaganda problems that we've confronted. And I hesitate to actually mix this in here at the moment, but I've just finished another, if you like, review of the whole of the space program, moon landings, Apollo and so forth. And I'm starting to uncover this incredible, and there's only one way to describe it, conspiracy about what was taking place. If you talk to the ordinary person on the street, you've got to be very careful about what you say. And that's because the power of a state has been so strong. And I mean, this medium television took control of the world from the 50s onwards. And forming opinions in popular culture has been, it's been sort of relatively easy for the state to create all the kinds of myths and impressions. And actually, it's rather sad, because what we've done is we've kind of created a delusion, really.
We have, actually. Look, this I'll relate it to what I watched on the news last night. I watched the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. I was in Tiananmen about a week ago, and it's a bad place to be if you're confronted by a tank. There's nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere. You've got about a square kilometre of flat and nothing to hide behind. But the amazing thing was about China was that I was free to go where I wanted to. I could jump into a cab with the guys, walk around, disappear up side streets. No one following, no one really noticed, no one really cared. And while you had
you sure about that?
Certain.
Okay.
Yep, because we tried.
Okay.
You do see a lot of police. They're very heavily policed, and you do see military. And you realise that you are in a police state. This is not a so-called free democracy in the way that
where do they exist, Nick?
Well, that's
democracy
just,
exist.
And I figured that if you said the wrong thing around here, you were going to get a one-way trip to Tibet, and there'll be no questions asked. But having said that, if you did, as we do in the West, keep within the certain bounds and parameters, you're as free as the next man. And I thought about that, and I talked to the Chinese about their political system, and I won't go into it now, but really it struck me that, you know, the Tao and Confucianism reigns far stronger than the Communist Party. And as in any society where someone is in power, they're not going to relinquish it unless they have to. In the West here, we've got a velvet glove, which, as Bryan said, sort of relies upon our tacit compliance and the propaganda of the day. But I bet you if we did some of the things which will get you sent to Tibet and China, you'd find yourself pretty much in stock here as well.
Yeah, well, you see, this is one of the big things that I've really enjoyed about Peter Berger, talking about what it is that actually makes a free society, a democracy and so forth. Pluralism and the acceptance of a rule of law. And of course around those two areas we could have lots of debate, Nick, I know, because you and I have got strong feelings about that. And what happens in popular culture, things are pretty superficial. But hey, just for now, because I know we're going to talk about this again, I think we'll call it quits here. We're going to go and have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again soon, guys.
Yeah.
All the best.
Justin, I hope your book's doing well.
Yeah, Justin.